welcome to the EMS Handoff podcast, your source for all things EMS. This is David, along with my co-host Bradley Dean and Eric McCullough. We are here for some fun tonight, and just really whatever comes out. Are pretty much right there. We've distinguished and really looking at your all's labels from now on. We're not sure what we're going to get out of our guest tonight. We'll just have to see where the next hour takes us. Eric McCullough, the man with the plan last week, taking over the golden microphone. How's things over in Nashville? I was over in your neck of the woods last week.
It's been going good. Father's Day, birthday, so this is kind of nice. Hot, very hot.
Birthday, isn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just been really hot and miserable, and I'm just waiting for more of that to come.
Hot and miserable. Never in East Tennessee or Middle Tennessee, and certainly never right there along the eastern coast. Bradley Dean, you've got wonderful beach weather, don't you?
When the temperature and the humidity match, it's a little difficult sometimes.
Yeah, when it's in 60s, it's all good. It's not a problem, right?
Yeah, so just so you know, you're freezing every now and then, David.
Just every now and then.
Just every now and again.
Yeah,
all
the
right.
entire intro.
Did he freeze on purpose? I feel like he's just messing with us at this point.
Have you not seen those things now
God.
where you got to make it like a picture?
Wait a minute, I'll be frozen.
No, don't do that.
We're
Gosh.
gonna break out. We're gonna break out the Max Headroom next, like it was like.
Mm.
And by the way, none of this is getting edited. This is what you get.
This is
sometimes.
probably what people come for. They're just like, they don't, yeah.
They have no clue. This is like, the back of the ambulance. You're not sure sometimes. So, all right. Before we introduce our guest this evening, we'd like to thank our podcast partner, the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. They've been a tremendous partner to the EMS Handoff podcast. And while we remain your source for all things EMS in the podcast verse, GEMS has been an industry leader for many years. So make sure to go by their website at gems.com to make sure and stay informed on all the latest topics. Also, to see all of our past episodes. And while you're there, we've also got some other good podcast hosts out there. And also, if you're following on the audio, you can find us on Google, Spotify, and Apple through the EMS Today podcast through GEMS. Make sure and give them a shout out while we're there. Also, wearing the nice new shirt that we've been talking about for a little while, the new Keep Back podcast shirts. Make sure and go by and check out the entire line of EMS Handoff merchandise at the Pursuit Company, at the Pursuit Company or pursuitco.com /EMS Handoff. They've got a lot of great shirts, comfortable. We also have the hoodies. I know it's in the middle of almost summer now. No hoodies needed, but you get those ready for winter as it comes out. So time to get going. Bradley Dean, introduce our guest.
So tonight we've got John Spencer, who's the Director of Education for Platinum Educational Group. He's a certified firefighter, licensed paramedic, an EMS instructor and coordinator in his home state of Michigan. He loves the EMS industry, and he's been part of the industry for the past 28 years and enjoys sharing this love with everybody. He's passionate about advancing professionalism in EMS by teaching with a focus on the affective domain. John, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right, John. So right now, in the short couple minutes we've been on here, how would you grade our affect?
Wonderful. Look, you guys are smiling. You're happy. Everyone's being professional, appropriate. Yeah, you guys. I'll give you guys a 10 out of 10.
See, right there. 10
That's
out of
good
10.
because the podcast verse, I mean, our Facebook group might not do very well if you had said it. I don't know. They might have agreed with you if you had said.
Yeah, we may have to.
No,
just ask that
they
question.
may. Yeah,
That's our next poll right there, guys. Is like, what would you grade our affect?
Yeah, why don't you leave
an episode? It's like it's great. So, all right. So let's just jump right into this topic because it's one that I like and not really many people think about it. We talk about getting along with people and something like So let's get into that. What is the affective domain?
Yeah, so the affective domain. So when we talk about people's learning, then of course, we talk about the three domains: the cognitive, the psychomotor, and the affective. And probably most people, when they're thinking about EMS providers, they focus primarily on the cognitive and the psychomotor. You have to have the knowledge and you have to be able to perform the skills, and they kind of brush over the affective domain, which deals with the heart. So thoughts, feelings, values, our core values. And basically what it comes down to, probably to sum it up in a service industry is whether or not you like serving others. That would be the affective domain.
So it's actually kind of interesting that we have this topic right now. This weekend, I posted a poll on my LinkedIn group, and one of the things we were talking about was how many years as an EMT do you have to make a good paramedic? And usually really kind of taking that to set up the next kind of group of questions that I have on there. But what's interesting is a couple of comments basically kind of hit this. And one of the things we've that was brought up is talking about, it's really kind of talking about the passion, as the X factor. And it's like we all are looking for how to find the next great individual, and it's kind of in this area. It's how you talk, how how you interact with people, how and a lot of things that basically boil down to what we also just term as professionalism, right?
Right. I don't think it's probably doesn't come as a surprise to you guys or anyone else that we are looking for who's going to be part of that next generation of EMS providers, right? Or pre-hospital practitioners, if we're really going to push the profession forward. And I think across the country, all areas are experiencing shortages of providers, paramedic EMTs. I know here in Michigan, we have a critical shortage of EMS providers. And we have to try to figure out why that's occurring. Why aren't we drawing more of the younger generation into the profession? And this affective domain piece, I'll admit I've been at this for a while. I've been off the road for a while now too, but as a young EMT and as a young paramedic and young firefighter, I probably wasn't always the most affective professional individual. I mean, let's be honest, everyone has a bad day. And I've been to burnout and back, right? And so that's what really brought it into my focus is how can I help improve the image of our industry so we can draw more people in? I mean, initially, it was one trainee at a time, and then, I became an instructor coordinator, and now it's a classroom of individuals at a time. And then in 2015, I came to work for Platinum Educational Group, and that gave me a little bit bigger of a soapbox that I could stand on for this important issue. But it does boil down to professionalism, and I don't know that everyone knows what professionalism is. Certainly, if you pay attention to the news or look for stories coming out of the professional journals, there's a lot of evidence over the past few years that our industry is struggling with some what I refer to as a breakdown of the affectual integrity. We seem to see more and more stories about not just new providers, but experienced providers making some pretty bad decisions that I think that's a piece we need to figure out. Is it something that Is it something that we can do a better job of educating and during initial education, or is it a continuing education topic? Is it we need to do a better job of calling the herd and screening individuals before they come out into the profession? I think that's what we need to figure out. And I've been at it long enough to know I don't have the answer, but I'm a big fan of synergy. And I think if you get enough people together moving towards a singular goal, then the issue can be figured out. And that's really what I want to do, is spark interest. And I know I'm not alone. There's a lot of people that are really focusing on it now. So hopefully we can do something with it.
Do you think there's been a de-emphasis though of the affective domain? I mean, right now, maybe this is just regionally or whatever, but like a lot of services and education institutions are under crunches to just put out numbers almost without exception. Like they almost, I'm not saying they don't care, but they're just like, we need licenses, we need butts and seats, we need people driving and stuff. And so do you think that might drive down that impulse to try to impact the affective domain, that they get to where if the employers don't care and the people who are hiring don't care, then do you think it gets a little hard to chase after that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, guys, is that first, I don't know how well we were doing at it before, because it is the softer skills, and we work in an industry that's full of, macho, tough guys and gals. But certainly now with the shortage, and if you're looking at, even if you're being driven by retention numbers for accreditation purposes, at the higher levels, or just, we need people with a pulse and a license, because we need EMTs, we need paramedics. So it can be a meat in the seat. And if you've got 20 coming in, the expectation is you should have 20 graduating. And it's possible, and it's doable, even with paying good attention to that affective component. I would suggest, I don't think instructors set out to gloss over it. I don't know that everyone's comfortable in setting up evaluations on how we can evaluate it. And then once we have evaluated it, how to have those tougher conversations surrounding the 11 professional attributes. Because some of them, they can be touchy, right? If it's just us guys together, it's easy for us to come up and go, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're not looking real good today. You kind of stink. But when you're an instructor in a classroom, that can be a difficult conversation to have with a student, that their personal hygiene or professional appearance is lacking. And so I don't think it's anything intentional. And I think everyone's doing their best to do what we can do to fill voids. I don't know what it is. I know we're in a service industry, and it takes someone with the heart of a servant to want to do this. And so maybe it is being driven by that need in the initial education, but we're having it pop up out in the experienced providers as well, which guys, 2020 was a crap year. And this year's been really tough too. So I think compassion fatigue is a real thing. And so you can have really good experienced providers that when they're on and they're having a good day, they would handle things more professionally. But we all have those off days, especially if you're short staffed and you're working over to staff the units or the stations, and you're spending more time on than off. Then I do believe compassion fatigue is real. And I think that's part of what we're seeing on the stuff that hits the news, where people are just making bad decisions. Hey, let's have a contest and see how many patients we can take selfies with while they're unconscious and paste it on social media.
So go ahead, Brett.
I was going to jump in here and say, we're talking about the affective domain. And I'm going to go ahead and put this out there. One, as an educator, two, as an administrator in an EMS agency. We tend to hire most of our problems. Poor students make poor employees, or bad students make bad employees.
Yeah.
If a student can't make it to class on time, can't do the stuff they're supposed to do in class, I'm not talking about grades. That carries over, and I see the same thing when they become an employee.
Absolutely. You can have that stellar straight A 4-point. I have the cognitive domain down. Give me a test, I'm going to pass it. I can blow through all your psychomotor skills, and I can do it beyond precision, right? It is part of who I am. I can do it without thinking. But if I'm a jerk and I don't care for people, or I lack integrity, then as soon as they come out into the industry, then that is part of the problem. I believe if a student demonstrates a lack of integrity during the initial education process, then there's a good likelihood that they're going to follow through in the future, and they're going to be that provider that, you know, pronounces a patient after working a cardiac arrest, and on their way out grabs the wallet. And I know that's a big jump from being a little dishonest in class, but if we lose the integrity of our industry, what do we have? We have unfettered access to our patients' homes. Not many people open their doors to strangers and allow them in to see what we see and to do what we do. And we were once near the top of trusted professions, and we're sliding. And so I think you're 100% right that operationally, and I've experienced this too, because I've been on the EMS operations side as well, as when you're hiring just to fill a gap. I need 10 people. I don't care what they are. They've got a pulse. They've got a license. They're good to go. We can train them, right? Yeah, they're flawed. We can fix them. It doesn't happen. So I think you're right, and that's kind of where I lean towards. You know, using the effective evaluation to call the herd. Certainly not everyone that says I want to be one should be one. Whether that's EMR, EMT, advanced, or paramedic. Just because they know people that, well, my brother's a paramedic, my dad's a paramedic, or I come from a long line of firefighters, so I have to be a firefighter. No, you don't. If you don't like people, I don't want you representing my industry. There's enough of that, right? So I think we just, on the initial education side, we just need to get good at developing good situations on when to evaluate, how to evaluate, which is constantly, by the way. There's your answer to when do you evaluate the affective domain? All the time, right? It's always under review. Not just when you're doing a scenario, not just when you're out on clinical or field experience. It's how you behave. If you're on time, you're late, right? So if you can't make it to class, and if your work's not done when you come to class, then you're already demonstrating weaknesses in those professional attributes. And I think we just need to get better at that and get better at having those conversations, because some things we can mentor and we can coach and we can help people get better, but they're not going to get better if they don't know. That's the first step. Someone's got to tell them that they're not yet competent in these areas, and then help them develop an action plan and then hold them accountable.
And I think you've made a very good point that a lot of this starts at the education level. You know, when you take a look at those educational entities, we're kind of the entry pathway into the profession itself. And so if we get some of those individuals that may be weak or maybe not even developed yet and allow the bad habits to go and continue to pass on, well, that's obviously going to go to the operational side as well. And when we take a look at it, those individuals that are in that capacity that have, as you said, haven't ever been told that they're not yet competent, they, will pass, and they don't develop that internal locus that says, hey, I need to grow. And this is where, we've kind of talked about some of the different texts out there. I'm a big fan of Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willings. And, it's like, hey, there's a lot within. And sometimes those individuals just don't know it yet. And so if we model that on our side, and hey, as an educator, last time I checked, I still have a pulse, which means I'm human and I make mistakes. And I'm going to own that and say, hey, I made a mistake. And, I'll do my best to fix it. And then if we model that and say, hey, we're here. If for some reason something happens and we end up showing up late, communicate. Hey, I usually had a person within the classroom when I was directly in there. It's like, hey, I would text that person, hey, do me a favor. I'm stuck. There's a 3-car accident on the interstate in front of me. There's no way to get off. I'm on my way. And this is when, and you're like, hey, do this until, and you set those expectations. And then when they see you model that, and that goes to, as you said, dress and appearance, your way you interact and communicate. Hey, if you see somebody that has a title chief or director or what, I'm the first one when we're in that professional setting, we're all around. It's like, hey, director such and such, or hey, chief, or doctor, or whatever that role is. You provide that you wish to have emulated, and then you set those expectations and you hold them accountable to it. And it's like, hey, you're getting too comfortable, we're slack, let's bring it back up. There's different things about wearing uniforms, and I'm not going to go into which way is best. Some people are like, you have to wear, but even if you don't require uniforms, have a professional appearance about you. Not walking in like a slob, because we all know, I go back to an experience, and my wife always loves when I talk about things, but she ended up having to have her appendix removed in first trimester of pregnancy. She had actually just gotten into the second trimester. Surgeon come up there, and he's just sitting in the rocking chair talking to us about 10 o'clock in the evening. He goes, this is what we're going to do. And it's like, dude, the surgeon's falling asleep just talking to us, and you're getting ready to cut on a second trimester pregnant lady. That, I'm not feeling the vibes here. And we know that a lot of this, that affect, that side, people take that into account when they see you, and that's ultimately that treatment side. So I know, Bradley, you were going to say something a minute ago. You're on mute.
So the question I've got is, can a student fail solely by having a poor affective domain?
And
Yes.
I would argue yes. But there's caveats to that, right? So it's been standard practice for EMS initial education to evaluate the student's affect at least twice during the program, right? Minimally once at halfway and once at the end, and the end has to be a passing affective evaluation. And that's what we're taught, right? Whether it's through the instructor classes, through an MZ, or if it, like here in Michigan, we have instructor curriculum, and it's defined by the state that minimally of twice, once in the middle, once at the end. And I would say, based on that, they say you have to have a passing affective evaluation at course end to complete. So I would say, yeah, then it's possible to fail out. based on affect alone. But you have to have good programmatic policies and administration over you that's going to allow you to enforce that, because that is a difficult conversation to have when it's that student that's had all straight A's and they've never failed a skill evaluation, but they don't have their poop in a group when it comes to dealing with people. They're not punctual. They can't do anything on time. They're demeaning, and then they fail that effective evaluation. Then I would strongly encourage people to use that as that's a fail. But the way it's currently set up, if we're only evaluating it twice, once in the middle and then once at end as a go no go, then we're not really helping our students. We're not really setting them up for success. A lot of what we do as instructors is really mentoring and coaching, and that requires feedback, and so frequent evaluations and feedback. So if you have a 6-month program, then it shouldn't just be at the 3-month and at the terminal point. It needs to be constant, and when you see them do something that's positive, then we need to call that out, right? We need to recognize those behaviors we want repeated. And when you see them doing something that's less than positive, that will ultimately cause them to fail, then we need to sit down with them with that evaluation, have that conversation openly, and being honest. And sometimes honesty is just uncomfortable for all parties, especially if you're the one being told you're not doing something right. But then help them develop an action plan that's going to have them explain to you, what are they going to do to improve between today, this conversation we're having, and the next evaluation we're going to have in a week? What are you going to do to improve in this area? What actions or behaviors am I going to see? That way it's objective. It's not just Spencer's feelings on whether you're doing it or not, because behaviors are observable, therefore objective. So what am I going to see you doing that's going to show me that you're working on improving in time management, or in professional appearance, or in personal hygiene, or in integrity? That way we're not only are we working with them and providing that feedback, but then you have this paper trail already established that says, for this 6-month course, I worked with them weekly. So look, here's 23 evaluations where I'm telling them they're lacking in this time management or in integrity. And each one they say, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work on it. And each time I'm having them sign saying, if you don't improve here, you're not passing. So on that 24th one comes and I say, I'm sorry. Well, we've had this conversation. You're still not competent in integrity because of these behaviors, or in time management because this is, look at this stack of papers. Now we've built a defensible paper trail so that we can exit someone. Yeah, you got a 4-point grade. Yeah, man, you're really good at the bag valve mask, or at intubating, or starting IVs, or whatever. But professionally, you're just not there. And then to make sure that we got policies backing that, so that we can exit, so that failing AFEC can be an exit point. And along with that, sometimes you recognize that student just, if you as the instructor are already getting the sense that they're not cut out for the industry they're going into, not based on anything subjective, right? Not based on the color of their skin, or because they're female, or because they're chubby. Because if I stand up, I'm chubby and I'm still a darn good paramedic. I can't crawl as fast as I used to when I was a skinny firefighter, but I still get around. But based on objectives, if they're demonstrating to you that they're just not cut out, I think we owe it to them to say, hey, based on what I'm seeing, I don't think you're going to be happy with this profession. I don't think you're cut out for this. I'm not exiting you, but I am letting you know that it's evident to me you don't like people. Have you ever thought of working with animals or accounting or something other than serving people? I think that's part of what we need to be doing as instructors. And not just in the classroom. This goes continuing education too. For just because you get a license and you're out there doing it doesn't take you, you're not off the hook for the affective domain, right? We still need to be holding one another accountable, even after we're out of class, to have someone saying, hey, Spence, I noticed you're a little edgy with patients, or, why are you referring to them by that term about frequent flyers? Sounds harmless, but there's a lot of negative connotation that comes along with it. If we got better at having those conversations with each other as professional providers, then we're going to help our industry too. Does that make sense?
Well, it certainly does, at least for me. And what you're talking about with the paperwork is something big. And for us, we develop an action plan. And a lot of times when we're talking to our candidates, one of the things we do is we sit down and have the conversation and say, hey, this is what we've been identified with. These are your faculty member, a preceptor, somebody has brought something to us. And we're having this conversation and just kind of let them explain. Because we always know, if it's not us directly identifying it, we always know that there's three sides to every story, your side and my side and what's in the middle. I'll always try to get to that and find out, but if you directly observe, hey, I noticed this, what's going on? And give them a chance. And sometimes they may actually think that they're in the right. And that's a good opportunity. Like, hey, I'm glad we had this conversation because John, what you did there, that calling somebody frequent flyer, yes, you've heard it a dozen times, but that's dehumanizing the patient, taking that out. There's a reason. Find out. There may be more opportunities, and then we document that. It's like, hey, we're going to do this. We had this conversation. Don't really think anything because you understand, but I expect not to receive this kind of stuff again. And you kind of set that on the direct path. This is what we're looking for, and really always kind of trying to point that way forward, not harping on the negative, because then they're going to be like, oh, John's just coming to me with another thing again.
Right.
But it's hey, the cars are doing it for us now. You're going too far off the side of the road. Let's push you back a little bit. And find that way. Again, we model that behavior. We've kind of set forth those expectations. And if somebody gets off the path just a little bit, you kind of give them that nudge back just a little bit as well. And for us, one of the things that we take a look at is how do some of these things tie? So a lot of times we talk about, you've been talking about showing up to shift just a little bit late. And so we kind of take a look at, hey, they're like, hey, I end up getting held over. We get this call at the last minute and I end up having to transport to a hospital 2 hours away. And so it's an hour to get to the call, 2 hours to take them, 2 hours to get back. And now all of a sudden I'm 5 hours late getting off. It's like, yeah. And because you showed up today 5 minutes late, that crew just now had to do that exact same thing. And, we tied to documentation as well. Why is clinic documentation in the education setting important? Because truthfully, it can be subpoenaed just like everybody else's material. But hey, there's certain things that you need to know. What happens if you don't submit a document? What happens if you don't submit a patient care report? In the state of Tennessee, you can actually have adverse action taken. And so that's why we have the 7-day. And they're like, well, this penalty is extremely severe. Yes, but it's 50% off of a grade versus having your license suspended for 30, 60, or 90 days.
Yeah, and David, you've made a couple of wonderful points. And I know I keep going back to mentoring and coaching, but that's what we do in leadership, right? And being an instructor, that is a leadership position. And so we have to have these conversations and we have to be that mentor. And Stephen Covey talks about seeking first to understand. So if I'm going to sit you down to talk to you about something, then we need to have that type of conversation. I want to know, I don't want to just talk about the incident, because the incident's done, but let's talk about what was going on that led up to that. Oh, so you were running late, and as you were backing out of the driveway, you ran over your dog, and then you knocked over your neighbor's mailbox. Then you got pulled over for speeding, and because you didn't want to be late, because you know that I'm going to get marked down for being late. But if you don't know everything that leads up to what we just witnessed that we're going to talk to them about, then we can't really help. But so seeking to understand is essential. And then,
that goes into affect as well. Compassion is a component of that as well. It's kind of funny how it's kind of a circular process.
And we need to remember that our students are coming to us from a different educational environment. Whether they're coming to us straight out of high school, or they've been out in some other industry and they're now coming into to join our profession, they're not used to education the way we do education. And so we need to make it real for them, because if they know the why behind the what we're trying to teach them, then there's some context to it and it makes more sense. So why am I so hard on you about arriving on time? And then it's that example you shared. Well, because when you're 5 minutes late, that crew that has just finished their 24 just bought an LD, and they're going to be gone for 6 hours. And so now you've negatively impacted those crew members. That person you were supposed to relieve is now away from their family for another 6 hours. And you're negatively impacting the agency, because now they're paying for that additional time. And you may have put that patient at risk, because that provider is already coming off the tail end of a 24 or 48, depending on where you're at. So they've already put their time in and they've been running calls. And because you were 5 minutes late, this is what's playing out, and making it real for them. And so, you decided you're not going to turn in that patient care report. Well, then let me tell you what's going to happen. There's a negative impact when you don't turn your work in class. And let me tell you why. It's because in the real world, if you don't have that report in X amount of hours, whatever that policy is, this is what's going to happen. Or you falsify documentation on a patient care report, so you didn't really take that blood pressure. What's the harm? Everyone's 120 over 80, because that's what the textbook says. I'm just going to put those numbers down. And then you end up in court and they get you that, no, yeah, you're right. I admit I made up that blood pressure. Now everything else in that report is suspect.
Well, and very, very interesting that you bring it up. Recent experience in taking a look at something, or being, I shouldn't say being involved, but actually watching something occur, was very interesting. If you take a look at this incident, if the individual had not lied on the patient care report, everything else could have been explained away.
Yeah.
And this was, in text conversation between Bradley and Eric and I, or Bradley and Eric, really, before talking about intubation, some reports that are coming out. Intubation is one of those things that are out there. This individual didn't intubate. There was an airway issue. Falsified the documentation on there. We can explain, hey, how many of us on here have missed a tube?
Right. Yeah.
Eric's just not wanting to raise his hand because he's not on camera, but I'm talking for him too. So we all have it. We've all, I remember as an EMT, hey, I've missed 8 IVs now. And the guy that, one of my supervisors said, the day that you forget how many that you've missed, now you can actually talk about how many, are out there. And it happens. There's physicians, there's, the cases are measurable. Don't falsify. And that actually hits us a little bit differently as well. And one of the reasons we harp so much That's like one of my things. There's only really 3 ways for you to fail my clinic section. 1, not do it. 2, turn in things late, or 3, falsify documentation. And that's because if you have any license at all with us, one of the things that you have to deal with is the fact that we actually are required to report you to the state EMS board, and they can take adverse action against your other license. And it doesn't even have to be an EMS. If you have a massage therapy license, there it goes. And how many of us, if we lose our licenses, so there's kind of embedded background to all of this, but if we don't explain that to the students, or even if we're on the operational side, Bradley out there talking to his team out there on a regular basis. Why do I get on to you when you're not here? Why do I get on to you when you don't? There's all these different things. And in the military, we talk about the second and third order effects of our request or our actions. And on the surface levels, like I'm 5 minutes late. No big deal. I didn't turn in a PCR on time. No big deal. On the surface, it looks great. Hey, I get that corrected. I'm here. We can get the ambulance. Now, what is that? Well, that other provider has had to be on, and now somebody is adversely affected because somebody fell asleep behind the wheel, or so many different things. Like, these are the things that you have to think about.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of this book. It's called The Slight Edge. Have y'all ever heard of it? It's a really good book. It's about like the little things that you do that compound to the bigger things. So, and one of the biggest issues I had with the affective domain, I don't think I've ever failed anybody for the affective domain the entire time I was sitting as the program coordinator for the EMT and advanced EMT program at the college I was at, because I didn't know how defensible it was. And I remember I would get phone calls or texts like, I can't believe you let this person out. I was like, I didn't let these people out. Number one, they passed the program. They met all the standards. You hired them.
Right.
I couldn't vouch for, I'm sorry, I don't know that they're terrible people outside of class. When they were in class, they were minding their P's and Q's because they weren't stupid. They knew not to cross the line in class. I had no idea they were going to be like this. So have you seen that or come across that when you have instructors who say, well, hey, it's easy to talk about, failing the affective domain. It's another thing to try to like actually go after them for that.
Yeah, because I think most people consider it to be subjective, right? Because you're talking about how do you truly measure someone's values, right? And honestly, you can't, right? I can't rate you on what you're thinking in your brain or what you feel in your heart. I can only evaluate you based on the behaviors that I see. So someone that is good, and good meaning they're people smart, right? They're able to fake it till they make it. Those type of people, they'll be able to slide through, because we may not catch it because they know how to behave when they're in the classroom, and they're on their best behavior out on clinicals and on field experience, and those flaws may not even show up until they're already hired and out there, and then they come back and say, well, why did you let them pass? Well, because they met the benchmarks, they met core requirements, and they passed. I didn't see anything that I could objectively observe and mark them down for failing on the affect. And it's true. I can probably count on one hand. I know there's no probably about it. I can count on one hand the number of final failing affective evaluations I gave when I was still active every day in a classroom teaching everything from EMR through paramedic, and that is three times. My recommendation to my program director was they don't make it. And now maybe several times throughout the course of the class, I have talked to them about it, but that final effective evaluation 3 times. And of those 3, 1 held. 1 we invited back into the next cohort just to continue to work on it. And the other one just opted not to continue after that and didn't pursue it. So those evaluations, those evaluations are typically pencil whipped because people consider them to be subjective, and you just have to make sure that your evaluation is tied to observable behaviors. And that there's the document that's out that's part of the EMS instructor guidelines from NHTSA from 2000, I don't know, 2007. I'd have to go look, but they're available. You know, the EMS instructor package. It's in the archives at ems.gov, but they're still retrievable in that there is that effective evaluation form that I think probably most programs in the country are using some version of that. And there's listed behaviors that we can watch for that makes that truly an objective evaluation. But again, 3 times that I can remember failing a student on a final effective evaluation. I don't think it happens that often. Likely due to all those things we mentioned earlier, retention and needing to graduate people, or just you can fake it till you make it. You know, John Wayne Gacy was not a successful serial killer because everyone was creeped out by him, right? I think there's a good example of someone that lacked affect, but had a good exterior that made it appear that he did, right? I mean, that every serial killer that you can read about have an exterior that looks like they're a good person that just turns out that nah, they're really not.
All right, so John, we spent the last a little bit talking all about affect and implementation in the program. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of wrap up your thoughts here on, you know, affect, why is it important, how to get started, and yeah, just wrap us up for us.
All right. Well, again, not discounting that the cognitive domain is important, right? Because you got to have the knowledge, because you have to have that to be able to apply it, to be able to apply the skills that you learn in the psychomotor domain. Just as important as the cognitive domain, but I've always argued that the affective domain is probably the most important domain for us to be evaluating and modeling as instructors and in leadership in EMS. Because what it comes down to is there's no way around it. We are a service industry. And we were at, and are still towards the top of being the most trusted professions out there. And as I mentioned before, we are one of few professions that have unfettered access to strangers' homes. They call us when they're having their worst days. And when they're having their worst days, they expect us to be on our best day. And they deserve that. And you have to have the heart of a servant. You have to want to serve these people. It's not about just coming to work, hitting the clock and getting paid to recliner race or to sleep in the front of a bus, right? It's, you found the door on your way in, you clocked in, we're here to take care of people. And that's what we need to do. And we need to remember that these people are having the worst day of their life when they call us. Whether it's because they're wedged between the toilet and the tub, or because they can't get out of their chair, or because their ceiling fan's on and it needs to be off and they need their Diet Pepsi refilled with 2 ice cubes, not 3, whatever the reason they call. And whether people think it's abuse of the system or whether they think they should be calling or not, that's beside that doesn't matter. The fact is they called. And when they call, we have to show up, and they deserve our best and they deserve our heart. And we need to treat them just like we would expect anyone else to come into our homes and treat our loved ones. And we have to do everything within our power to stop this crazy stuff we're seeing with EMS, fire, the EMS and fire professionals stealing from patients, assaulting patients, abusing patients, drug diversion. But it's not just enough to call it out. We have to understand the behaviors leading up to it. We have to do a better job of calling the herd and preventing those that should not be part of our industry, prevent them from becoming a part of the industry, and only let those that we want, that we know are going to represent, become our peers. And again, guys, if I had the answer, I'd share it with everyone. I would put it out there. It wouldn't just be my intellectual property. I'd share it with everyone out there, but I don't. But these conversations, this is what's going to get us to where we need to be. It's a group of people moving towards the same objective, and that is that we love our industry. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be in it. I know that. And I know there's a lot of people that think like me, and not because my thoughts are right, but because they've got the heart of a servant and they're in the business to take care of people. We get the right minds in the room and we open our ears and listen with empathy and compassion. We can solve this issue, and then we can return it to the great industry that people are flocking to, instead of us borrowing and stealing from other professions to try to put meat in the seat and to fill voids. And that's truly my passion. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity to stand on my soapbox and then share it with everybody.
Well, John, we certainly appreciate you coming on tonight. We've hit a lot of kind of key areas that really kind of stay undercover, but really should be brought to the forefront. I'm going to give Eric an opportunity to kind of give us his last thoughts tonight as well.
Pretty much just the same thing that John's been talking about. It is important to measure affective domain. I think it's something that if you're a director or an education leader, that you should talk with your instructor faculty, and also maybe get in some buy-in from your community, from your clinical leadership and from your EMS agencies as to how they would want. Because the worst conversation to have with EMS leaders is that whole, like, I can't believe you graduate some of these people. And it's like, well, then give me a SILA, or give me a litmus test, give me something to grade these people by. I'm going, because we also have to remember our restrictions. Like, I worked for a college system, so there wasn't. It's really difficult to go outside the lines, to color outside the lines in a lot of these very structured, rigid systems where personality is lauded and is fine. But maybe even in our own industry, there are certain personalities that just don't fit the mold as well. And so it's good to have some buy-in from like your local agency and stuff, how you can improve that process.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank John for coming on tonight and going through again this topic, and really thank you with the partnership that we've got with Platinum. I've seen the coins. We'll be getting some more of those out here in the future as well. And we've actually got a couple of additional episodes with Platinum coming up here in the near future. So make sure and go by and check out their materials, see more from John as well. And so as we wrap up tonight, we always like to hear your feedback, so make sure and go by our website at emshandoff.com. You can reach us through there. Also, make sure to go to our social medias at Facebook or Instagram. Facebook has been relatively active here lately. And don't forget to go by GEMS or EMS Today on Apple, Google, or Spotify, and also find us on YouTube if you're wanting to watch this video version as well, if you're listening to it on audio. And don't forget, lastly, to go by thepursueco.com/EMS Handoff to find our merchandise line. From our co-host take off, he was Rhodes today. Eric McCullough, this is David. Take care, stay safe, and always remember the value of your EMS handoff.